So welcome to OLC Live. This is the second session of OLC Live as we prepare for the upcoming OLC Accelerate in Orlando in November. Today we're talking with several people from Davidson College about their work on student voice. They're going to be giving a featured session at the upcoming OLC Accelerate conference on including student voice in decision-making at the institutional level, in higher education. And so they're going to be talking a little bit about student voice and then also about this project Davidson Now that they'll tell us about. So thank you all for joining us. Again, my name is John Stewart. I'm at the University of Oklahoma. And today I'm talking to Sundi Richard, Annie Sadler, and Arianna Montero-Colbert from Davidson. So thanks for joining us. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what is Davidson Now?
I can start out with that. Hello, everyone. I'm Sundi. And so I'm just going to give a bit of context. Davidson College is a small liberal arts college in Davidson, North Carolina, if you are not familiar with it. It's about around 2,000 students, and it is residential. And we do not have online programs or anything like that. So we've been a partner with edX and have done different things in terms of online learning as an institution. And one of our initiatives is called Davidson Now. And it's basically a series of short pop-up MOOCs, which are 2 weeks long, where the idea is to share Davidson expertise with a wider community and kind of serve a wider public. And so I think what we are going to talk about, or what I'd like to hear from Annie and Arianna about, is their experience in being part of Davidson Now as key members of the design team, and also their part in facilitating this initiative. Because as students, it is not integrated into their life at all. It is very much a separate thing that the institution does to serve a greater public. And so what is this intersection of how students see that and how students can be involved in that, and how much that has an influence on their own education and their time at Davidson. So that's the background. So you might just want to start off by saying how you're involved.
Yeah, I can start. So my name is Annie. I graduated from Davidson in 2017. I was an English major. I didn't do anything with online learning in my entire undergrad. And then upon graduating, I am currently working as the Digital Learning Fellow. So quite a jump from not doing any online learning to that being my entire job. And I'm in my second of 2 years at Davidson. And Sundi brought me in on the Davidson Now projects, kind of just to expose me and then have me be a part of the course building, because we're building it in edX, and just I knew how to use the platform. And so that started out as my role. And then over the course of the first Davidson Now course that I was involved in, it became a lot more about how do we want to design this course, what conversations. We had a lot of conversations of how can we break the platform of edX to do what we want it to do rather than what it was, intended to do. And so that, and then Arianna came along, and then the two of us have had a lot of fun pushing back on or kind of questioning how things are supposed to be done or what the conventions are, just because we're so new to this space. So I think our role is to ask a lot of questions a lot of the times. And then we also do a lot with the maintenance and building of the course.
Hi, I'm Arianna. I am a current student. I'm a senior, and I'm really excited to be here today. I think that definitely, along with what Annie was saying, something that I think our role within this Davidson Now project has been to sort of push the envelope on what types of things we're doing, or what types of things we want to put energy into. And I'm really excited right now, I guess. So the project that Davidson Now is working on right now is called Belonging, Appartenir, Race and Space in the United States and France. And so it's really cool. You might notice in the title that we actually have a French word within there. And we were talking for a long time about how we're trying to bring in the aspect of French society and talk about that comparatively. And Annie and I both I think we're kind of key in saying that you know, we really shouldn't be talking about open education, and we shouldn't be talking about cross-cultural studies without actually providing bilingual content. So that's something I think we're really excited in this initiative that we're currently working on, is actually trying to, you know, be less attached to conventions of how online learning has happened in the past and be more interested in how we can, like Annie was saying, like hack these platforms to do really exciting and innovative things. So that's definitely something that we've been working on. I don't know if Annie, you want to say something now?
I was just going to say, we also were newer to these spaces, so we didn't understand the undertaking of what it would mean to have a bilingual or attempt any sort of multilingual course. So we were like, yeah, let's do this. This sounds great. Like, we don't know what that entails. And so I think we can be gung-ho about a lot of things just because we don't know how big they are. And I think that has actually been one of the coolest things for us. Is Sundi has been so awesome at kind of encouraging that and allowing us to have that space and feel really comfortable saying, why can't we do the entire thing in French? And then she's pretty good about, Sundi's wonderful at kind of reining us in a little bit to the things that are actually possible.
And then, do you both have French? Do you both speak French? Or what's the process for creating this bilingual resource for students?
So we've been working on it all summer. We ended up bringing on, there are two main faculty members that are leading this course right now. One is in the sociology department and talks a lot about like housing and critical race theory. The other one is actually the chair of the French and Francophone Studies department. So between the chair of the French and Francophone Studies department, and we actually brought on another recent alumni who is fluent in French to work on this project with us. That's kind of how we've been doing it. We've been doing it for the past like month or two preparing. So that's basically the process. It's been really a challenge because we wanted to do sort of these live conversations just like these shindigs. We wanted to do them in both French and English, and we've been experimenting with different things about how we can provide content like that without actually having like a huge, like all of us being people who are actually bilingual in French. So that's been something that's been a challenge, but we've actually been able to provide a lot of the content through subtitling and through translations that we prepared ahead of time in both languages, which has been really cool. So.
And then what's the reaction been from students? How do they like, I guess, the challenge of a bilingual presentation and the affordances of having both French and English?
I think something that we found is, I think when we went into it, we knew that there'd probably be French speakers who also spoke English, and we also knew that we couldn't make it fully bilingual, so we called it an experiment, and we said we're going to try to make as many parts of it bilingual as we could. And so there are people in the course that have mentioned that they are bilingual and are hoping to see some French content. We haven't really gotten a lot of feedback on how that was available to them and how they're interacting with it. So hopefully we'll get that as the course comes to an end at the end of this week. But I will add, sorry, no, go ahead. I was just going to add to what Arianna and Annie were saying about questioning and their role as questioners, and kind of playing around with how things work and how they want things to work. So Arianna's role in this really came out of an accident, I would say. It wasn't intentional at all. However, we found that it was a great thing to happen to include a current student in the design and participation and facilitation of these courses. She was actually brought on to help in the last course as kind of a research assistant for one of the facilitators. And so she joined the project as that and then became this kind of core part of what we see as a course team in creating these types of courses. So I think now, having had them be a part of this, I can't imagine not doing it that way, and how the constant questioning is awesome. Like, it really pushes you to think of things in a new way and just not do the same old, which is really fantastic.
Are there assumptions that you'll notice, Annie or Arianna, that were coming out of the design team or out of the college or the professors? Assumptions about what students are interested in, assumptions about, you know, how to use technology, just assumptions that you thought were strange, that you pushed back on, that you've been able to question.
Yeah, I mean, well, certainly, like, one thing is that definitely, like, and I don't know, maybe Annie can speak to this too, but definitely, like, I think there's this assumption that all millennials are, like, interested in using technology and know how to use technology perfectly, but actually there's been a bit of a learning curve, and we have to make sure that when we're providing materials about this, as well as when we're marketing it, that we're showing why this is actually something that's unique to be provided online, or like why this, like how this is actually different than just taking another Davidson course, for example. I know something I've been involved with a lot is like thinking about, you know, what capacity students who are actually enrolled at the college have to be involved in this type of thing, and how we can make the content less of the like traditional classroom assignment and more of these like explorative type creative projects that you can kind of involve yourself that will actually, like, you know, hype you up rather than be this just like other task that you're adding to your list. So that's definitely something that I've been working on. I've been really excited to work on some of the activities. Annie, I saw you unmuted yourself. I will mute myself now. You go.
I know. I just wanted to actually be able to be in the same conversation where you were unmuted as well. I'm not sure if there's too much feedback though. The first Davidson Now course we did was around engagement in a time of polarization, talking a lot about online spaces and how we engage in those. And I didn't have a Twitter, and a lot of the course stuff happened on Twitter. So some of the questions I was asking were, how do I use this Twitter? How do I engage with other students online, particularly coming from a residential four-year college where I didn't do any online learning? I think pushing back on the assumption that Arianna was saying, that the millennials or my generation are just like automatically know how to work or communicate or engage in online spaces. I think also, I think some of the professors at Davidson, where they're not exposed to as many different kinds of online spaces or ways of interacting online, I think I've definitely seen a big learning curve amongst the professors where they have to figure out how to interact with their students in a different way. And it's not necessarily they're going to start interacting with their Davidson students in that way, but I think that kind of exposure, I would like to think maybe has impacted the way they're teaching. I'm not really sure. I'm trying to think of other. There were a lot of long videos in previous online courses that Davidson had made. They were around calculus or physics, and so it maybe made more sense. And I think Arianna and I pushed for a lot of short videos. And I don't necessarily know if that was an assumption or just the way previously that Davidson had designed their courses before Sundi, Arianna and I were involved, that we kind of shifted away from.
Annie, can you add a little bit about the language and the language used in engagement in a time of polarization, and kind of our rethinking of that, or either one?
Yeah, so we've had two courses in this past kind of year. One was engagement in a time of polarization, where we're talking about engaging in online spaces in this kind of current political climate. And we had a really broad, we thought we had a really broad range of language and ways of enticing people to join this. But when looking back, we realized we had hyper intellectualized this really basic thing of talking to other people. We were using language that was pretty exclusionary in terms of just like you're talking about it at such a high theoretical level that the kind of, how do you just talk to people online in a way that is productive, and how do you disagree with people? Kind of almost basic kindergarten stuff of like how to listen to people and how to have a positive conversation kind of got lost in all the theoretical. And there's a space for that. I think that was really cool to be offering, but I think we alienated a large group of people who maybe weren't comfortable in this space, and we're looking to this course to be kind of an entrance into engaging in online spaces instead of it just kind of reiterated some fears I think that people had. So the second course, where we're talking about belonging, we're automatically the course is about belonging. We're trying to make it as clear and straightforward and welcoming so that we don't just have people who are already in these higher ed or online learning spaces feel comfortable engaging. And I think, I don't know how successful we've been. I think we'll maybe know by the end of the course or after the course has been up, because while we add content for 2 weeks, the course is up for an entire year. So it'll be interesting to see how people interact with it.
Yeah, I just want to add on about the Race in Space project that, by the way, I did drop the link for it. I don't know if we're explaining it super clearly, so I just wanted that to be something that has like a full description there if you're interested in reading more about it. But I think something that's really exciting about this is, like Annie was saying, like at its heart, if we were talking about this as like an academic course that was listed at Davidson College, we'd probably call it like housing and gentrification in like, or something like that, right? Or it would be like Paris versus Charlotte, like all these like very like academic terms. And I think what's really exciting, and maybe this is shaped by like both Sundi's interest and like drive of how she's been shaping it, as well as I know Bonnie Stewart, who was working on the engagement in a time of polarization week with us in February that we worked on, was also really interested in this idea of the, oh, I'm going to get the terminology wrong. I think like the X MOOC versus the C MOOC conversation. So like, I know it's very in this connectivist MOOC sort of agenda that we're trying to actually make things that are more explorative. We're trying to make things that are more not like a top-down, the professor's teaching you something, but we're all starting a conversation together. And I was really excited for this belonging course to be a really good intro for a lot of, you know, family, like cousins, friends, you know, that I might want to have a conversation about like, how did you choose where you're living? Or like, have you thought about like how that might impact like local residents there without coming at them with I pay $60,000 a year for my education. Like I know big words like gentrification and I know when to use them. So I think that it's really like been really exciting in that way that we can go at it with this different approach.
What has the collaboration process been like working with faculty? I know Bonnie's, you know, a slightly different, slightly more maybe welcoming faculty member than usual, but what do you feel that you're learning and working with them? And then what do you think that they're learning working with you?
Well, I know Annie had said that like maybe it actually impacts how they're interacting with us in the classroom, but definitely in the online sphere. For example, when we go on these hangouts that we go on, we have one coming up this Friday. What we normally do on those is, you know, the first time we tried it with these two new professors is we just sort of like let it take the role. You know, we came up with questions we wanted to talk about, and ended up being a lot of like professors just sort of leading the conversation and interviewing this guest expert type person we brought on. But I think that in the past hangout, the second hangout that we had a couple days ago, and this upcoming one, hopefully we've transitioned much more to a role where it's a conversation between the professors and even me and Annie and Sundi, as well as the contributor that has brought like either a written piece that they're sharing or a video that they're sharing. And I think that that has been really, really a different experience for me. Like it's like my professor puts like an @ in the hangout chat to me to be like, @Anna, like, what do you think? Like, @Anna, like, do you want to take this question, you know? And like, that is just mind-blowing. That is not happening in the classroom, right? So that's been exciting for me.
I think also for a lot of professors, the online is not a space for spontaneity. There's a lot of preparation that they feel like they need to do before they can express something, whether it be on Twitter or on a blog post or even, you know, their written research. And so I think when we're talking about these online discussions, which we have 3 per 2 weeks, where we're bringing in these different people to really have a conversation, perhaps similar to this one, where we're just talking about a reading or something, I think it's been really fascinating to watch these professors become more relaxed and be more okay with spontaneity in this online classroom, because I think I've watched both of them in face-to-face classes before, and they do that so well. They're able to engage students and make them feel welcome and heard. I think it's an entirely different skill set to do it in an online space, and I think watching them grow has been really fascinating. So I'm super excited to see what this third and final course brings up.
And I would add that I think having Annie and Arianna present as being in Davidson classrooms actually allows faculty members to be more comfortable in these spaces that might not seem as familiar. So I think that's really helped the comfort level. It's when a faculty member agrees to do this type of course, the idea is to kind of expose them to online teaching in some degree. And so it's funny, the one thing that came up with this past group was no grading. And that was like, I guess, a big buy-in to being part of this course, is that there is no grading involved. However, we've seen that the kind of interaction that is needed for this type of connectivist type conversation MOOC is also something that faculty members might not be as familiar with or comfortable with. So that's another kind of learning curve that happens with this type of collaboration.
As students, had y'all experienced ungraded, no graded courses before, and had you had the experience of a seminar type course, a discussion based course before. And how do you see, what's your experience been of these courses shifting from graded lectures to the connectivist seminar type format online?
I would say, yeah, I've had, as an English major, I was fortunate to have a mostly discussion-based education. I think what Davidson students as well as faculty struggle with is the translation of that into the online space. They know how to facilitate a discussion face-to-face, but when asked to do that, they don't know the cues. They don't know how to get everyone involved in a discussion. And I think that's been where the learning curve is. In terms of the ungraded, Davidson is a pretty traditional, like you take 4 classes every semester and each class is worth 1 credit, whether it's a lab course or not. So I think for some professors, this is like they have complete freedom to design it and not be constrained by the institution, which I think is really cool. There are I did an independent study where I didn't have a professor and was able to grade myself, but that was an unusual circumstance. More of me just trying to break the rules wherever I am.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of embarrassing because I feel like anytime that I show up online, I must be ranting about this. But I really feel like the model that we ended up going towards is much closer to this idea of contract grading, which I'm really obsessed with at this point in time in my life. So I think that what we ended up doing for the course is if you end up like purchasing the certificate, what you have to do is like you check that you've participated in like X number of activities. I don't remember exactly what it is. I know you guys were setting it up on the actual edX side of it, but that type of model feels very similar to the contract grading model to me, where which I've been lucky to have been exposed to at Davidson. I think the class I took last, I don't remember if it was spring or fall, was under Mark Sample, which was in our digital studies department here. He had this really fleshed out contract grading where it basically was like, maybe not finish this and you get the certificate, but it's this very contractual agreement. If you want the A, like you finish 5 blog posts that are at least 250 words and like one of them has a picture in it, right? Like something along that model that has much less emphasis on this like weird evaluation with all these like internal biases. And we have no idea what the actual reasons for all these coming in. It's like really like honestly similar to like the rubric type grading we had in elementary school. And I think that that's also not shockingly also very similar to what it seems like these like internships and jobs are actually asking of us, right? Like they'll give us a contract, complete all of these things in the contract, and we can meet about it. And it's not that you can't ask me questions about this and you have all these tests that are arbitrarily placed. It's actually like, let's get this project done and let's learn something from it. So that's kind of what I've been thinking about grading in this. Again, you'll probably hear me talking about this every.
Was Mark's class the first? Mark Sample is sort of well known for ungrading and for contract structures of courses. Was Mark's class the first one of those that you'd had? Was it difficult in that first class? Did it take a while to transition into that? And then helping to design these classes, what are y'all doing to help students sort of understand expectations when they're, they're not just in the traditional model?
I'll let Sundi and Annie talk about helping design these courses, but in terms of at Davidson, it was the first course that I had taken that was contract grading. We had spent about half of the first class, which was, I don't know, like 20 to 30 minutes, going through that and why he had chosen that, as well as like the different intricacies and like how that could actually work out, and anybody who had questions could bring them up, which I think was really helpful. It really like set the bar. Now there's a professor, one of my beloved advisors, Dr. Melissa Gonzalez, actually was recently in this ridiculous alt-right publication that's like a student publication, because she basically had sent out an email to our classmates being like, if anybody's interested in contract grading, here's the information about contract grading. And it was really absurd, actually, that somehow the email had been forwarded to this publication, and they were talking about how we were trying to make grades into socialism and just overturn everything and no rules and anarchy. And it's just honestly very ridiculous to me that this is the case. I think that most people at Davidson are looking for this type of thing. I think that people are looking for this type of experience, as well as if we don't want to call it contract grading and we want to be like, let's just have rubrics again from elementary school. Like, there's really not that much different from that. So I don't think that it actually is this big shift that people like conceptualize it to be. I think that it's actually pretty intuitive for us, and that it actually just relieves a lot of anxiety from the student perspective on like, what am I being graded on? Like, how are external factors like and my demographics impacting this situation, right? It's more like, oh, like I can just know I need to do my part in this project, and then I'll get what I need from it. So. And
then I guess for Sundi and Annie, how are y'all going about sort of scaffolding, helping students, get into ungraded and contract graded coursework?
Well, I will say that we market this as not a course. It is a conversation. So the very way we frame it is to say that you're there to participate and to have a conversation with other people. And so the idea of having an assessment that says, I've completed these things and I want to get this certificate, that is solely there for the platform and for the people who like to have that certificate to say that they did that course. And it's very much in the vein of, we trust that if you're into this course and you really want that certificate, you're going to be honest about doing what you've said you've done. So this is not a course. We don't have to scaffold the type of grading or non-grading. It's really seen as a conversation. I don't know if you want to add anything to that. I did want to quickly go back to this idea of discussion-based learning. And I want to highlight that Davidson is actually really, really good at this. And one of the things that students love about Davidson is their contact with their professors and the conversations that happen in the classroom. I think one of the things that we struggle with is, how to open that classroom up, both for the student's sake and for the public's sake. And so how do we do that in a way that's going to benefit students and the institution?
What's been the experience with both this course and the prior in terms of opening up that experience to the public? I guess specifically, what do you gain from the perspectives and the conversation that the public bring into the classroom? And what do you think the challenges are in, both in logistically managing that and then also in structuring, a course or a discussion for that broad of an audience?
I think there are a few logistical challenges. The first one that comes off the top of my head is when we have a live discussion where we want everyone to be able to join. What time do you choose? That's a really small example of like having a much larger global audience, and then something where you want to encourage face-to-face conversation or screen-to-screen conversation. It's how do you even decide what time of day to have those? I think that's been interesting. We just try a whole bunch, and we just kind of assume that some people will make some live discussions and others will make the other ones. I think also in terms of between the two courses, the first one we thought we were making it accessible by having an open, free, anyone come join course. But the structures and the way, as I was mentioning before, the language that we were using to talk about things actually prevented other folks from joining. And so I think that's something we've tried to be really intentional about in this most recent course, this belonging course, where we're aware of what language we're using. We're not making the assumptions that people know what edX is or even that they know what online learning is, with the hope that, when you're not just stuck having a conversation with people who already agree or with people who already understand or have some sort of baseline knowledge. I think with the first course, engagement in a time of polarization, we ended up doing that unintentionally. And so we've tried to do a lot of work on the second course around breaking down assumptions that people know what online learning is. And so we had some flyers that were we used flyers, assuming that not everyone's going to see a digital ad or has Facebook. You go, we're in the Southeast and churches are really strong around here. You go to a church and you put up a flyer and trying to get a different audience. We felt it was especially important when talking about neighborhoods and belonging, because so often that involves everyone. And it's only going to be a meaningful conversation about belonging if everyone can be involved.
Along those lines, was there anything that you did both to reach out to disability audiences with disabilities? I'm thinking particularly of visual and audio disabilities in a course like this. That can be both a challenge, but then also a great opportunity to talk about, senses of belonging and senses of place.
Well, we're actually really lucky. I think I'm not entirely certain what the actual degree that Dr. Fash has, but Dr. Fash was coming from this perspective of working on subtitling for a number of years. So that was really exciting because she actually helped us to understand a lot of the guidelines about, you know, I think it's ADA, is that the correct act? But the one that like makes us actually provide the content in a way that is accessible to all types of learners, or at least all types of learners that are coming to this online space, right? So I think that was really exciting. So we definitely have been doing a lot of work on the subtitling front. So there's no like video content that's available unless it's available with actual subtitles on top of that, as Annie can tell you. She's been putting a lot of sweat work into that. So there's that's definitely going on. I know that edX also actually helps by, you're not allowed to upload an image of any kind without actually providing a really detailed alternate description, which is, it's actually really, they make it like a mandatory, like you have to fill in the box. You know, it's not like oh, by the way, like in case you want to do this, or like hidden in the documentation somewhere. So I think that has been one thing that we've been really trying to focus on.
And something that's come up in the course is the fact that in a lot of these neighborhoods, there is no internet connectivity. So we're already missing a portion of the people who we want to be part of this conversation. And that's something that we had talked about from the last course, and just from conversations about MOOCs in general, that usually the audience is kind of people who have already been in higher ed in some way, who are getting to be just getting more lifelong learning. And so I don't know if we've been successful at getting the groups and the outsiders that we want, but we're attempting to, and we're trying to, and it's always part of the conversation.
Along those lines of limited access to both Wi-Fi and then also the I don't know, computers, cell phones, those kinds of things, is there anything that you're doing in terms of minimal computing, or in terms of minimizing the level of technology that you need to access the course?
We've worked some with making sure the mobile aspect of the course is clear. It's not something, I don't know if you've worked in edX before, everyone grumbles. It's not the easiest thing to work in. They do, like Arianna was saying, kind of guide you in trying to make things accessible. But in fact, you can have a course and it looks like very confusing in the mobile version if you don't check it. And so I think there is a light version, and the whole course is kind of light on technology. We don't want it to be heavy in terms of what people need to access. And so there's definitely in our design process, it's a simplify. We've even tried, so we've been talking to the Teach Out folks at Michigan, who do kind of these pop-up MOOCs, and one of the things that they do are these live events, or even just connecting the course to an actual live event with, you know, people who might not be part of the online version of the course. And that's something we tried to do with this past course, is attend an event, talk about what this course was about, and get those people to speak and be part of the course, even though we knew that they might not be part of the online version.
Yeah, I think that we've been making a lot of move towards that. I'm really excited in to understand what further moves we can make and how we can just keep improving on this front. But ultimately, I think that at least from a student perspective and from what I've seen going through like the traditional academic setting, like I'm really excited about online learning as this actually incredibly accessible space in ways that other spaces aren't, other learning spaces aren't, right? Like whether it be like, you know, somebody who has a lot of social anxiety, like has a lot of issues in normal classrooms, you know, to actually participating in the way that professors are looking for, and even just having the ability to, you know, prepare your thought and write it in a discussion forum means so much. Or the fact that, you know, so much content is provided asynchronously and you don't actually have to show up like 3 hours a week and do this. It's something that you can log in, watch the live event later whenever you have time. Like it doesn't matter if, you know, like your children have school then, you know, it's fine. Like you can still take your children to school and watch it later. So I think that I'm still really excited about, you know, these initiatives, like almost entirely because of the way that they're accessible forms of education in ways that traditional classrooms aren't. So, but I am excited also to move forward towards becoming even more accessible.
I think it's also exciting to look at learning spaces and online learning spaces outside of the rigid confines of this is a course, you're being graded, here's the institution, you're getting credit or something for it. I think that was really cool. And I know I've done a lot of working with alums to get them involved in the course, and they've been really excited just to have kind of a connection or a bridge back to the kind of learning and the kind of conversations that they miss having at Davidson, just kind of wanting to have a kind of critical look or an intellectual look at the daily parts of their lives, where they live, how they talk with people online. And so I think what's cool about what I really enjoy about this Davidson Now approach is it's not a super formalized space, but it's delivering the same level of, you know, quality education that people might expect from a formalized space. And so I think that was really cool to break down those boundaries of and kind of perceptions of quality of education, of where, again, who has access to that, but also where you might find, you know, conversations that might be happening at a residential private four-year institution.
And that's a great point about reaching out to alumni and the ability to build a community through these types of courses of former students, current students, people who have no affiliation with Davidson, but maybe live in the community. Yeah, I really like that model. I guess we're starting to run out of time, but I was wanting to see if y'all could give a sense of how you would encourage people at other schools to think about your model, to think about adapting your model. So from the undergraduate perspective, from the alum perspective, the recent alum perspective, and then from the sort of administrative perspective, how can people tap into what you're doing in terms of incorporating students, incorporating recent alum into the design of their courses? What would you say has worked well for you, and how would you encourage people to think about that model and to try to adapt it for themselves?
I can go first from an administrative level. Give you time to think. I definitely think that having something that's low stakes or lower stakes than a course helps. And just creating a model that has space for a team that includes students and staff and faculty and alumni. Rethinking the way that a course is done with only the key facilitators. I think the key facilitators are an integral part. The course we're doing now is really based in what our two main faculty members bring to the table, and it's amazing. This is the thing that we want to share, but they're also great at opening up that space for us to join the conversation. But there has to be space there for that to happen.
I think in terms of young alum, particularly the alum from Davidson, it's kind of a shock to go from, as I was saying, this space where everyone's constantly questioning and curious about things to maybe a day-to-day life where you're not as intellectually engaged in that way. And so I think that was something that people were craving and missing, and to have, again, a really low stakes way of engaging. And also for a lot of just some of my friends who had never done online courses, they felt like they were learning some new skills around, okay, this is how I can learn online. And I didn't necessarily learn this from Davidson, but now I can maybe go apply that to other areas. And it's also really cool because there's some alum who are decades out, and then there's some who just graduated this past May. And so that's been like a really cool bridge where, you know, and that kind of like tone of just you want to get to talk to everyone extends beyond just the folks who were involved at Davidson, including, and I think having it based in like having many folks from Davidson, I think has maybe helped create a tone where people are just really curious and talking to each other, so that they're including the other folks who maybe aren't as associated with it.
Yeah, I think something that's really important is when you're trying to include students in the design of a project, or you're trying to bring them on in any sort of formal capacity, that is actually written up in some sort of formal capacity. Here I come back to my pro-contract standpoint, but I really, really do think that it's overwhelmingly important that this is like, you have to provide some sort of like resource, whether that be course credit if there's not a lot of funding behind this project, right? Or more ideally, not replicating the same system of inequality with the unpaid internship gig, where it's like we just have endless amounts of work that students are supposed to be participating in. We have a course load we're supposed to be doing, and now we're just taking on this other new job that we have no idea what the boundaries of how much we're supposed to get done is, or like what actually falls to us or what we're allowed to do. And then not actually having any sort of, representation in terms of either financial compensation. Also being included on the course team page is something that personally makes me feel like really, really central. It makes me feel like I'm on the same level as all the people on the course team, right? Because my name is listed alongside these professors, alongside Annie, alongside Sundi. So that's really important to me. I mean, I really do believe like both that it would be doing a disservice to students by not like teaching them while they're in this student and like person you're mentoring capacity how to actually advocate for themselves and what they're worth, as well as you're going to get the same people that are able to do these types of either unpaid internships or uncompensated in terms of course credit if you aren't having some sort of written up thing for them. And I think that people really undervalue that, and that's one of the reasons that there aren't a lot of students that we're looking for involved in these projects.
Thank you for saying that. I should have said that as well, but yes, I absolutely will reiterate that and say that it's key that students who are involved, their labor is recognized in some way, and that we value their time and effort.
Well, I feel your value through your contract, Sundi. Thank you so much.
Yeah, that was reminding me. I was just looking up there's a document that came out of UCLA a couple of years ago now, 2015, a Student Collaborators Bill of Rights. And this was primarily for digital humanities projects, but I think it applies just as much into digital learning. But yeah, how to treat students ethically when they're working on these types of projects. Which seems simple, but we manage to mess up pretty much every day. And so a resource that I'll put in the notes and encourage everybody to check out. And as you said, just having a byline and just literally including their names on like this person contributed to this is really simple, and yet it's something that we managed to forget to do a lot, or neglect to do, or omit them, elide them. And so, yeah, and then, actual thinking about real pay and student credit and all of those kinds of things. Well, we're about out of time, and so I just wanted to thank you all for joining me today here on OLC Live. We'll be putting the video up and the notes up fairly soon on YouTube and sharing them out from OLC's website. And then, of course, come and see Sundi, Annie, and Arianna at OLC Accelerate in November in Orlando and hear more about their project, talk to them. Sundi will be there, I assume, in various roles. I know that you'll also be at OLC Innovate and the Innovation Lab, and so people can come and design with you there. But anyway, thank you again for joining us today, and I look forward to talking to you all more.